88, your weekly weekly podcast, sportscast, I almost said. Your weekly a sportcast would be fun, by the way. But
Hey,
your
weekend
weekly
sports Saturday 3-hour cast, that'd be great. That'd be fun.
that would be fun. That's one of my life goals I want to color commentate a game. That would be a fantastic time. But we are your weekly podcast for the business
Boom! I
side.
can be the play-by-play guy. You can color commentate.
We're the weekly podcast for business side of sports, bringing you an inside look and giving you a little bit of a different perspective on the sports world. Consider this some unmuzzled sports talk. We're starting in, David, because we're so excited. We want to start talking about some NFL football for the 2022 season. And on today's show, we're going to be taking you inside both the AFC North and AFC South. We're going to be talking about each one of these teams super in depth. And what we're going to do here is we're going to tell you one reason for optimism for each team, and one, we're going to call it a crux, one spot on this team, whether it be management, coaching, a player, a position group, whatever it is. What's the
just that Ryan likes him? That's a crux.
Yeah. What's the exactly? What's the spot that could hold these organizations back? So that is the title of today. This is what we're going to be doing.
Ryan likes him.
You are messing up my intro so badly. I am Ryan Roberts at Rise Adrift on Twitter, joined by @Mav_sports. Of course, David Turner, 18-year scouting vet across the NFL, CFL, and 3 straight Arena League championships with the Arizona Rattlers. David, since you want to interrupt my intro so much today, sir, how are you?
I'm good. I'm obviously surly and ready to go. I thought this was a great topic and show for tonight. You know, we're all jonesing for some football, so why not give it to them in June? And spend the next 4 weeks kind of talking about the different divisions and everything before training camps open up, and let the people know what's coming their way. And they can't say we're influenced by anything because this is preseason. So it's everybody's on the lull. Everybody's sitting and kicking back. The rosters are 99.9% put together. So let's figure them out right now. Let's make the call.
Yeah, it seemed like a good time to do it too, David, because we even saw a little movement in the division today. The Pittsburgh Steelers signed Larry Ogunjobi, the defensive tackle that played for the Cincinnati Bengals, and that just had me thinking, like, these rosters are pretty much set, right? Like, this is pretty much what we're going to get at this point. So there's always going to be some late signings. There's always going to be a trade here and there, unusual cuts and veterans going to new teams that you weren't expecting to be on the market. Like, all that stuff's going to happen. But for the most part, these teams are what they are going to be right now. So we want to dive deep into them. Before we do, would you be a parent of a high school athlete trying to make it to the next level? If you answered yes, then why not secure coaching for them from an expert? Here at Maverick Sports Consulting, we work with high school athletes of all sports to create a strategy for their recruitment plan. With limited scholarships given each and every year, which is getting way worse with the transfer portal, by the way, having a pointed recruitment plan helps our clients secure their opportunity to play collegiate sports. We focused on your transcripts, your film, your leadership, and more to set your goals and create pathways to get to them. Whether you're looking to attend an SEC school or Slippery Rock University, we can support your efforts to get to those goals for 2022. Contact us at Maverick Sports Consulting today. It's MaverickSportsConsulting.com. So, David, I figure since we're starting with the AFC North, AFC South, what better spot to start than the team that was just playing in the Super Bowl? Lost, of course, to the Los Angeles Rams. Great team, by the way. But the Cincinnati Bengals, who we are looking off, obviously, some of the depth chart, David. For me, I guess starting with the positives, right? All right, let's take it a step back for a second. Big additions this offseason. Cincinnati Bengals finally did something that I've been waiting for them to do for the last couple years. They upgraded the offensive line, and I think they did really well in that regard. They got La'el Collins over from Dallas. They got Alex Kappa, who was a starting guard for Tampa Bay. Alex Karras is now their starting center. Jonah Williams had a pretty good year. So upgraded a couple different spots on the offensive line because last year it was a problem. But I think for me, and I would love to hear your feedback on this, the reason for optimism is the fact that your superstars are all young and they're on rookie contracts, right? You have Joe Burrow, quarterback on a rookie deal. You got Jamar Chase, young wide receiver, potentially the best receiver in the NFL in a couple years, on a rookie contract. You got T. Higgins on a rookie contract. Your superstars on this team, and specifically the quarterback position, you have great roster control with those players right now, which has given you the ability to go out and get guys like La'el Collins and Alex Kappa and some higher price free agents because you have roster flexibility, because your main signal caller and his partners in crime are all on some very team-friendly contracts right now.
Absolutely. And that's why you see a lot of the NFL teams, even this year, you had people go with rookie deals for a quarterback, like we were talking about. Well, I was talking about, Zach Wilson just being a different kind of Aaron Donald, but they traded it, got his contract. So now they have, that kind of deal up there in New York. And the same thing here. You have a Joe Burrow who's led your team to a Super Bowl, but it was only in year 2. So they can't even renegotiate his contract till the end of year 3. And that won't be a renegotiations for 4 and 5, or if they renegotiate, there'll be no 5. It'll just be 4 that he'll live out, and then he'll jump into it in 5. So they have him on this deal for 2 more years, and then the extension that I'm sure will come after. So, it's like you can, like you said, make a weighted calculation to go shopping in free agency and give some of these free agents 2-year deals, because you have him on a rookie quarterback contract for at least 2 more years. And then you got Chase for, I believe, 3 more years on his rookie deal, and T. Higgins 2 more years on that deal. So like you said, you have some superstars that are sitting there on very team-friendly, cap-friendly deals that will allow them to do what they did this year, which was shop a little bit on that offensive line, which was their number one priority. They obviously needed to do that because, Joe was just getting beat up way too much, hit way too much his first 2 years. And if you want him to last, you gotta get him some protection, because he's not one to hold the ball all that long. He's not like a Ben where he's sitting back there holding the ball way too long. He gets it out pretty quick. He's just getting hit so much because that line was just Swiss cheese and a swinging gate.
And we all know already that Joe Burrow is one of the better young signal callers in the game. My biggest fear, David, going into last season, and I mean, the offensive line wasn't good, but at least it didn't cost him any significant time from an injury perspective like it did the year prior. But I don't want this to be an Andrew Luck situation, right? Like, I just don't want it to be a situation where you don't do enough around him from a protection perspective and he just gets beat to hell and he has an early retirement. Like, I do not want that to happen. So, yes, I applaud the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been very harsh on them in the past. I mean, last offseason, I was so adamant about my disappointment in them not upgrading the offensive line enough, in my opinion. This offseason, I think they did a good job. I know La'el Collins at right tackle has had some injuries in the past, so like that's something that we have to monitor, obviously, but definitely the talent is better up front. There's no doubt. David, I have a clear weakness here. Do you have a clear weakness on this roster with anything?
I think my weakness if you look at the roster.
Okay. Do you want to say it at the same time, or you want to start us off? Let's say it at the same time. We're going to do 3, 2, 1, and then we're going to say it, okay?
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Cornerback.
Eli Apple.
Yes, we're there. We're there. Exactly. You're 100% right.
Eli Apple. I'm not even picking the position. I'm picking the person.
That's fine. That's fine. That works, man. I'll say this. I mean, like, Chidobe Awuzie had a solid year last year, but even him, it's just like, is that guy you really want to be a starting corner in the NFL? And then, like you said, Eli Apple. I mean, come on, man. Like, Eli Apple. Let's be honest here. We saw in this Super Bowl, it's just kind of a joke, to be honest. Mike Hilton's a good nickel, so they have that position, in really good movement going forward, right? But then cornerback, like, they didn't really do much to upgrade it. They drafted Cam Taylor-Britt, but like, I don't think he's going to give you much in 2022. He might have some possibilities down the road, but yeah, I agree with you, and I'm glad that we kind of see this one very similarly. I don't think they did enough to upgrade this cornerback unit. The secondary as a whole is pretty good when you take the safeties into account, and they just drafted Dax Hill, really talented player out of the University of Michigan. But the outside corner position for this team is weak, my friend. It is not great.
No, it's not. And, if they can do some sort of trade with draft picks, don't give up any personnel. But if they can find a draft pick trade for a veteran corner in training camp, that would really help this team and solidify, I think, a very solid defense that they have rolling. I like a lot of what they're doing. Like you said, the safety position is fairly good. The nickel position's good. I like the Britt Taylor kid, like you said, maybe not this year right away, But in a year from now, I think Britt Taylor has a lot of really good tools. So I'm excited about him, adding him. But I thought they needed at least one more veteran corner and to get rid of Apple, because I'm not an Apple fan, never have been, never will be. I think he is just a pass interference away from, costing you a game. So, that's just my take on it. But if they were to do one thing in training camp and kind of hunt for a veteran corner, because I think their cap space can take one on, and there might be a team trying to offload one just because of the money, I would say, I would be like, you know what, that's something to go get and someone to go get.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's not a great situation. And it's a shame too, David, that we have to talk about that, because the defense as a whole is pretty good, man. Like, there's not many holes on this roster just in general. It's just that cornerback spot is not great right now. So we're going to move on to who finished second in the division last year. That was the Pittsburgh Steelers, David, coming off a 9-7-1 season. Big Ben retiring this offseason. Feel like there's a couple different question marks that we can bring up here. But for the optimistic fans out there of the Pittsburgh Steelers, David, what's something when you're looking at their roster you can say, I feel good about that moving forward? That's a positive we can take.
Well, when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, honestly, I like a lot of stuff they got going. I just don't like, obviously, the quarterback position. And it's a quarterback-driven league. If you don't have one, you're missing them. If you're missing them, you're a hamstring, right? You're a hamstring. So, I like Claypool. I like George Pickens. I thought, that was a good pickup. I like Calvin Austin III. I thought that was a good pickup. So, and obviously they still have DeAndre Johnson. I think their receiving core has a lot of weapons in it to use. Najee Harris, truly excited. Love that kid. I think he's tough as nails. He's a pass threat out of the backfield. You know how I feel about Pat Fairmouth, the tight end. I think he's just next. I think he's the next up and coming guy who's going to just really be a solid Pittsburgh Steelers tight end. Zach Gentry, even the backup, is a solid Pittsburgh Steelers style tight end. So there's a lot to like here on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, I mean, you got a solid defense. Let's be honest. You added Miles Jack. You have TJ Watt. You got Devin Bush. So, I mean, you still got Alex Highsmith. So there's a lot. And then, I like Terrell Edmonds a lot. Mika Fitzpatrick's one of my favorite safeties, young guy. So, again, you got a lot going on in this team I like. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and bash it, because they're a solid team. And that's what they preach there, is having a solid team. They really have a good team. The biggest question mark for them, which is the worst position to be at, is quarterback. Did they do an incredibly brave thing and pick Pickett in the first round? They did. Was that a great home run for ticket sales? It was. Is Pickett going to be the next coming? I don't know. I like Pickett. I don't know if he's going to be the guy or not the guy. I'm a huge proponent of hand size. Everybody who ever listens to me talk, a huge proponent of hand size at the quarterback position, because in windy games, in games when it's wet, you got to be able to grip the ball and rip it. And with his hand size just being so small, I have questions that it will have the velocity and rotation ability at the NFL level. It's something I question. I questioned it with Baker Mayfield, and you look at what everybody's saying about Baker Mayfield now. So, again, I just question that. If he turns out to be one of the guys that can play around his hand size and make it work, God bless him. Let's go. This team's ready to come out of the gates, and they're going to be firing it on all cylinders. But without that position, and they drafted him in the first round, I just don't know if they got the right trigger man for this year. That's my biggest thing.
We agree on almost everything that you said, David. My biggest takeaway was, I think this is a traditional Pittsburgh Steelers team. They're going to play really good defense and quietly have a really good supporting cast around him from a skill position perspective. You mentioned Najee Harris coming into his second year. You mentioned Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Calvin Austin potentially as that fourth receiver who's the kind of the dynamic deep threat. And then I am about as big a Pat Freiermuth fan as you'll ever see. Like, I loved Pat coming out of Penn State. And he quietly had like I think 6 or 7 touchdowns last year as a rookie.
Dude, I had him on my fantasy team all the time, and he produced. And then when he went down, remember he got hurt for a couple games? I just added Gentry, and Gentry
did solid.
And they even started playing a lot of 12 personnel because Gentry came on when Fairmouth came back. There were games when Gentry had the 2 touchdowns and Fairmouth didn't have any. I mean, it was just solid. I mean, the way they use those guys there, they're smart. They know how to do it.
Yeah, and Zach Gentry, former Michigan quarterback, turns Michigan tight end. A little funny backstory there. But David, I wasn't going to harp on quarterback as much as I usually would because I'm not the biggest Kenny Pickett guy. I liked him for what he was, but I think that people kind of overvalued him slightly. I am going to harp on this offensive line, which I think is one of the worst 2 or 3 units in the NFL, to be very honest with you. This unit is not great, sir, and they didn't do a ton to upgrade this unit.
I was giving my kudos out.
Man, Dave, they did what did they do? I mean, okay, so here's the positives, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got James Daniels, who's a good guard that played with the Chicago Bears. Good player, no doubt. Like him. He could play guard. He could play center. I like James Daniels. I liked him coming out of Iowa. He's a good football player. Best player on your offensive line by a long shot. The issue is that you have Dan Moore, who I think is in his 2nd or 3rd year. I can't remember which one, as your starting left tackle. Dan Moore again. I like this as a swing player coming out. I don't think he should be a starting left tackle at this stage in his career. You have Chukwumu Okorafor, or Chucks, as they call him, at right tackle. Not good. Just not a good player. What do you want me to say? Left guard, Kevin Dotson, is meh. He's okay at spurts, but then he gets injured. Not a great player. And then they signed Mason Cole, who was playing with the Arizona Cardinals, who's just not very good at center either, man. Like, it's just, this offensive line's rough, man. Like, I mean, I'm trying to be nice about it for a second, but like, I don't know. I just look at this team. I just look at that offensive line, and I just say, why was there not any attention up front, man? You literally were like, we don't have Big Ben anymore. Who cares? Let's run it back. We're going to run back this offensive line. For what? You signed James Daniels. That's all you did. So offensive line, I do not feel great about, but we shall see if I am proven wrong, because I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers always overplayed my expectations for them because they are a great franchise. They are usually run very well. Consistency. I mean, David, they've had 3 coaches in the last 60 years, right? Or something like that. What are you going to say about that, man? Like, it is a very consistent franchise. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but the offensive line on paper does not look good for me. Moving on, David, we're going to go to the Cleveland Browns. You're Cleveland Browns. I know you're a big Browns fan. Yeah.
Whoa.
This team,
slow that down. This
team is going to look a little different this year, sir. It's going to look a little different. You mentioned Baker Mayfield before. Well, they have a new man in town.
It's a question in TikTok if I was waiting until we got there, but in TikTok they want to know if Baker Mayfield's going to be a Viking this year.
All right, well we'll get there. Right now, Baker Mayfield is still a Cleveland Brown. Oh yeah, I'm just saying we'll definitely answer that question. There's no doubt after the intro. So Baker Mayfield is still a Cleveland Brown. They have an assumed new man in town who they sent a lot of bargaining chips over to get Deshaun Watson on this team, and things keep coming out about Deshaun Watson. So there's a big question of how much will he be available this year? Will he be available this year? What is the long-term outlook? I feel like we've just been continuously talking about that, right? Though, but we'll see. They brought in Amari Cooper from Dallas as their new star wide receiver. They drafted David Bell out of Purdue, I think in the 3rd or 4th round. Can't remember. Offensive line, David.
3rd round. 22
3rd round.
Overall.
Yeah. So my positive here for the Cleveland Browns, I think you upgraded the skill positions this offseason, I would say. I mean, at least at the wide receiver spot. I think you got a really good player in Amari Cooper, the best receiver you've had in a couple years for the Cleveland Browns. Your offensive line is really good. It's fantastic. I mean, Jack Conklin is a really good right tackle. Jedrick Wills is a young left tackle who's had a lot of promise in spurts. Joel Bitonio is one of the better offensive guards in the NFL. Wyatt Teller may be the best guard in the NFL after a Zach Martin, if we're being completely honest. He's been that good over the last couple of years. Offensive line's fantastic. Defensively, they got some dudes too, man. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was a baller for them last year at linebacker. Their best player, Myles Garrett, is coming off another really good year. They have the secondary that includes John Johnson III, who's a very solid football player, Denzel Ward, who is one of the budding stars at cornerback in the NFL, Greg Newsome, the rookie from last year out of Northwestern, who had a really nice rookie season. So, I mean, David, there's a lot of great roster development here, man. Like, it's hard to pinpoint one spot that makes you feel good because the offensive line makes you feel good. The skill position players is getting better. I didn't even mention Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, which is still probably the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. And then you have these pieces on defense that makes you very, very happy with the prospects moving forward. But kind of like what we just did with the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least what you did with the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't know what to expect of this quarterback position, man. I don't like. Is Deshaun Watson going to play? I don't think anybody knows. How often is he going to play? Is he going to play? I don't know the answer.
Let me start with the positives.
Yes.
And then we'll get to the reason I think they're going to fail this year, okay? The positives are 100% this roster was built to run the football and play action pass and have defense come in and flip the field for them, because you got Myles Garrett, Clowney, like you said, JOK, you got Ward and Johnson. You got the defense has a lot of good playmakers on it. There's some depth. They did well in the draft this year, I thought, gaining some depth to what they had to be able to use in the third, fourth round. They utilized their draft picks for depth and to fill in positions. And Amari Cooper, I like, but I think he's at the tail end of his career. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I really like. I think he's a budding star. David Bell, I think you liked him a little bit better than I liked him, as far as I'm just saying, I don't think either one of us loved him. I'm just saying I think you liked him a little even better.
As a number 3 or number 4 option, I'm good with him. I don't think he has a lot of juice to him, but he's got good strong hands. I think he could have a role in that way.
For me, he wasn't one of my favorites. He might have been a 4th type for me with the special teams category, but moving him into a 3rd, I question it. But that's just what we'll see how it is. I'm not going to kill a kid before he steps on the field, right? It's just what I saw coming out.
Yep.
Now, like you said, one of the better offensive lines in the league, if not the best. It's really a talented offensive line to protect whoever is going to be the quarterback. And again, giving right along sidestep with you, Hunt and Chubb, best 2 running back combination, and Johnson is nothing to sneeze at either. They got 3 deep in the freaking running back room. So, and last year they had to use all 3 of them, and all 3 of them produced because this offensive line just holds up and just opens up incredible lines or incredible holes. So, again, I think they're built to run the ball, play action pass. Whoever's the trigger man is going to be able to utilize and use that. This would be the best offensive line Deshaun Watson ever played behind.
Easy. It wouldn't even be close. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Houston's offensive lines had this kid running for his life on 2-step drops. I mean, it was ridiculous. So if Deshaun gets to play behind this offensive line, it's going to be incredible. And Deshaun's a very talented, obviously, quarterback. So it will be really fun to watch if that happens. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, you want to know why I think the team fails?
Quarterback?
No, it's not.
Well, because the uncertainty over Deshaun and
this one, I got to call on the culture.
Okay.
Off the field, in the locker room, in the building, the culture is not built to win. It's not built for stability. It is a complete S show. I don't want to curse because I'm on TikTok and they'll throw me off for cursing. But it is a complete S show from what I hear. It's not a cohesive coaches, players, front office, everybody walking in lockstep. I hear there's a lot of people that are on their own, doing their own thing. Man, I'm showing up to work. Don't bitch at me, stuff like that. So if anything, that's why this team will fail, is because there's not enough unison in the building, and it's hard enough to win championships. But when you don't have a cohesive environment, it's absolutely impossible to win a championship. I mean, from the person answering the phone to the star quarterback. Everybody has to be walking in lockstep to win championships, or you're just going to fail. And so I think more than the uncertainty at quarterback, I think the off the field, in the locker room, in the building culture isn't one built to win.
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
As much as I love this, I mean, I think this team is talented, incredibly talented. I mean, you look at it like we just ran down. It's a playoff team.
It's a good roster. It's a good roster.
It's in a division where you got some challengers, but not everybody is, you're not in a gangbuster division, so you can win this division, right? But if you don't have that culture off the field, it's so tough to win.
Setting the over-under for starts for Deshaun Watson at 10.5, David. Over or under?
I really don't know because, I mean, more and more is coming out.
Yep.
And I just don't know what the commissioner is going to do. He hasn't taken a strong enough stance on it to be able to read what he's going to do. So if he makes Deshaun sit the whole year, then, that's still on the table. Strong possibility. I don't know what he's going to do. And I think it's terrible. I'll be honest with you. I think it's terrible the commissioner hasn't told the fans and the people in Cleveland what they're getting, because people are out there buying season tickets and making investments because they're saying Deshaun's going to be their quarterback. So people go and buy, season tickets to sell them and to utilize them and make money. But now they don't know if the guy's going to be the quarterback enough. And I'm sorry that the commissioner, I've been in meetings where I know when we had troubled players, all the information. So, I don't think this is a situation where the commissioner doesn't know what he's going to do. He just hasn't said it yet. And I think that's terrible because a lot of people are making money decisions based on him playing. And if he's not going to play, you need to tell these fans so they can do something besides invest their money in this team, because those tickets will go way down in value if he's not playing.
Yeah, it's going to get messy, man. I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, and I agree completely. I think I said it to start it off. It's a really good roster, man. It really is. There's a lot of good on this Cleveland Browns roster. We will see, though. Perhaps, David, outside of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the other franchise since like the early 2000s that has been amongst the most consistent, I would say, is the Baltimore Ravens. They have, from Ozzie Newsome to what they did with Brian Billick to now what they're doing with John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta. They've just been a really consistent franchise. They went 8-9 last year, and they were probably the most snake-bitten team in the NFL as far as injuries, man. It was bad.
Yeah, starting in training camp. Oh, my God. Yeah. Wink Martindale was lining up with freaking 9th and 10th corners and trying to win games. It was crazy.
Yeah. And you were down to I was about to say you were down to like your 4th or 5th string running back. Lamar Jackson missed a bunch of time with injury. They were snake bitten last year. They really were. So I would say, David, for me, I think it's just the fact that it's a new year. To be honest, I think that's the positive here. Because if you went 8-9 with everything that went bad last year, I have to think you're a playoff team if everything's going right? Because like you said, if they're healthy this year, Marcus Peters with Marlon Humphrey, with also getting a Kyle Fuller over here at cornerback, your secondary looks sick, dude, because you have Chuck Clark back, Kyle Hamilton, your first-round pick, Marcus Williams, who you gave big money coming over from New Orleans. That secondary is just going to be crazy. You got Calais Campbell up front with a young pass rusher and Odafe Oweh, who had a really good year last year. Michael Pierce back, who's he had a pretty good year last year, but the year before, I think he was fighting back from injuries. You drafted Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. Offensive line looks a little better. I think for me, it's just hoping for health, man. I think if you have health this year, you're going to be a good football team. So I think it's just kind of putting the injuries from last year behind you. I think that's the biggest optimism for me, if you're talking about from a Baltimore Ravens perspective. And the biggest crutch for me is I'm just not 100% sold with these pass catchers. I'm not. That is my biggest thing. And I think Lamar Lamar was having a really good year. Then he got hurt, and then everything was just derailed, man. The ending of the season just was not great after he came back. I like Rashad Bateman, who's coming into his second year out of Minnesota. He had a pretty solid rookie year. He also dealt with some injuries last year, but I like him. But besides for that, you're depending on guys like Devin Duvernay, James Prochet, Tylan Wallace, Benjamin Victor. Like, it's just not because they didn't go into the draft and draft anybody. Every rookie that's on the roster at the wide receiver position is a UDFA. And I mean, hey, if one of those guys comes in and surprises you, that's great. But I don't think that they did enough at the wide receiver position, because I know they have a guy like Mark Andrews, who's one of the best tight ends in football. I get it. So like that plays into the targets a little bit, but I really wish they would have done a little more as far as true wide receivers in this offense.
No, I don't disagree. When I look at it, it's like I love Mark Andrews. We know that. I mean, I pick him almost every week for my fantasy teams because it's like their weapon on offense, right? So one pass catching like guy they got. I'm less on Rashad Bateman than you are. I think he's a nice solid 2, maybe 3, but I don't see him as a 1, and there's no 1 on this roster. I don't see a 1 for receiver on this roster. So that's a big concern for me. And even at running back, you got Dobson, and he's supposed to come back, but when you look back there, you got Mike Davis and you got Gus Edwards. I just don't love the depth behind J.K. Dobbins. So with the injuries that they had last year, I don't see a lot of playmakers here. I love I love the defense. I think there's some great players there. A lot of fun that's going to be had on that defense. We'll see what the new defensive scheme looks like now that Wink is up in New York at the Giants, and they got a new defense coordinator here. But again, he's got a lot of toys to play with. They did a really good job stacking that defense for him. And Lamar obviously can get him out of trouble running the ball and running around with his legs. But we saw last year he got hurt. That got limited. Their production on offense fell down. So they really have to do one thing for this team, and that's start building up that receiving core for Lamar. Because if they don't, I mean, I just don't know where the points are going to go on the board. I really question the playmaking ability here. There's a couple players still on the street that might go after here. If these kids don't look good in training camp, you might see some of these names that are still on the street end up there. But in all honesty, that's the biggest question mark for me is their draft strategy away from receivers, especially in a receiver heavy draft that this class was. This class had a lot of receivers in it, and they didn't make sure they got one for them. That was a big question. I really didn't understand that in the draft strategy this year.
And we're going to move now over to the AFC South. Before we do, have you secured any sponsorship with your name, image, and likeness yet? No. Well, what's keeping you from earning money or gaining products today? It's probably access to the companies. Maverick Sports Consulting can connect those dots for you. We believe in the power of athletes making a living off of their likeness while going to college. If it's simply that you don't have access to companies, don't let that keep you from being successful. Contact us, Maverick Sports Consulting, so we can help you navigate your path to gaining corporate sponsorships for your collegiate career. And athletes' earning potential is limited. Why wait until tomorrow to start earning today? It doesn't matter what sport you play. We help all our clients achieve their goals. Just contact us today at Maverick Sports Consulting. TikTok, the clock is ticking. All right, David. So I think, again, we're going to go in order of best record from last year to worst record. We're going to start with quietly. I mean, people talked about it because it was kind of a running joke, but the Tennessee Titans were the number 1 seed in the AFC playoff picture last year, even though they lost in the first round in their first playoff game. But, David, let me start with you, because I think I started the last one. What is something that makes you optimistic about this Tennessee Titans team? That I think it was, were they 12-5? Yeah, 12-5 last year. They were a good football team last year, and obviously they came up short in the playoffs. But what's something on this roster as you look at it has you, and it could be from a coaching perspective, it could be from a roster management perspective, whatever it is, what gives you hope for a Tennessee Titans to continue their trend? Because they've been on obviously a good uptick over the last couple of years.
Well, I think it starts right with the main catalyst to their success, which is 22 Derrick Henry. Derrick is a guy who's run for 2,000 yards. I mean, this is a guy who can put the workload in and put the cart on his back and carry it all the way through a season. I love what he can do. I love how I just love watching this kid play. I really do. I really enjoy watching him play. I love that they drafted Haskins, the kid out of Michigan, to be behind him. They still got Hillard. The offensive line is sound. It's solid. It's not my favorite overall in the league, but it's sound and solid. They got a good start there. I love the young kid Burks. I don't understand why they traded A.J. Brown. That one just blew my mind because
they're cheap. They're cheap.
I know, but it just blew my mind because I love that player. I love that player's tenacity. I love what he brings to the locker room. He does so much in and out. Did they go get one of my favorite wide receivers in Robert Woods? Yes, but Robert's coming off an injury, so we'll see what he can bring to the table. They also got they still have Nick Westbrook. I can't pronounce the last part of that.
Just say Westbrook. Just say Westbrook. You're good.
Yeah, Westbrook. And then they still got Des Fitzpatrick, who was one of my favorite receivers from last year's draft, in the fourth round. I thought that was a steal for picking him up. So they got some young weapons on the outside there on offense. Ryan Tannehill is not my favorite quarterback. They drafted Malik Willis in the third round. That'll be interesting to see how he goes and how he develops. They still have a very sound defense. I think they got a strong defense presence. I don't think they're as lethal as you would like them to be. I think they're solid. I think they'll be a good team. They'll play solid together. But this is a team I will question if they make it. I don't think they'll make it to 10 wins. I don't.
Wow.
I think this is a team.
After a 12-5 season, you don't think they make it to 10 wins?
I don't think they make it to 10 wins. I think they're right on the cusp at 9.
Interesting. I think we see this one. This is probably the only team so far that we see just a little differently, just a little bit.
Hold on. The division they play in helps them a lot, right? But again, being the number one seed, they're going to go up against other number one seeds from the other divisions they match up against. So therefore, that's where they're going to falter. Whereas last year they weren't that number one position, so they didn't have to battle like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I would say I just like their defense, I think, a little more than you do. I think Jeffrey Simmons is one of the better defensive linemen in the NFL. I really like Harold Landry, who another quiet player that had 13.5 sacks last year, some crazy number like that. Kevin Byard,
Jacksonville, coached by Urban Meyer, and you go up against Houston. So when you go up against a team that's he's Jacksonville, coached by Urban Meyer, and then you got Houston. That's at least 4 sacks a year right there. Come on.
All right, man. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he has another year. I think the year before, the 2 years before that, he had like 10 sacks as well. So he's been a double-digit sack guy a couple times. But Kevin Byard is one of my favorite safeties in the NFL, ball hawking type of safety. I really like a lot of what they've built on that defense personally. Offensive line gives me some pause, and I know you mentioned that a little bit. It's not your favorite group. I also think that there is some holes there. I like Taylor Lewan, although he's a little bit injury prone at left tackle for the Tennessee Titans. And I really do like their right guard, Nate Davis. He's a good football player. And Ben Jones is a solid center, but left guard and right tackle give me a little bit of pause. But I'll be honest, David, the thing that gives me the most pause about this is you mentioned Treylon Burks. I really like Treylon Burks. I did. And you can check out my scouting report on him. I liked him a ton. Usually the 1-for-1 thing where you trade a known commodity and then draft a rookie in the first round that is the same player doesn't usually end up very good, but that's not what I'm going to pick on here. It's Ryan Tannehill, and it's not his fault. I mean, it was a great story. He came out of mediocrity and injury with the Miami Dolphins, and he had a huge renaissance to his career down the stretch, and I applaud him for that. Unfortunately, got him the bag, and they're glued to him here, and I just don't think he's the guy to get it done, man. I think that he is just – it's just not a great quarterback situation. Because like you said, they drafted Malik Willis in the third round. I can't vision him taking over that mantle this year. I think Ryan Tannehill, unfortunately, is going to be too good to bench, but also not good enough to take you to that next level, that next step. So I think they just have a little bit of a ceiling with a Ryan Tannehill personally. So that's just kind of what I envision with that team. So we'll see. We'll see. Now let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts, David, a team that I think both of us have been kind of optimistic about this team over the last couple of years, because I know both of us really like Chris Ballard. I know that I like Frank Reich as a coach. I think you do as well. I think this team has a lot of roster construction that I like a ton, right? And I think that they have built a pretty good offensive line outside of left tackle. I really do. I mean, obviously, Quentin Nelson is a fantastic offensive guard. Ryan Kelly's a good football player. Braden Smith's been rock steady at right tackle. And you're coming off a season where Jonathan Taylor led the NFL in rushing this past year, right? I think that the thing with the Indianapolis Colts, though, has been they just have not been able to get the quarterback position right? So that is going to be the question mark, obviously. But I'm just going to tip my hat here as far as what we're going to feel positive about. I think Chris Ballard has built a really good roster here. If they can get that one position right, I think that this is a very good roster to work with. But for me, the pessimistic side of it is always going to be, because I know you got Matt Ryan. I like Matt Ryan. But is he the guy at this stage in his career to take you to that level? I just don't know if he is, personally.
I love this roster. You know how I feel about how Ballard creates a roster. Him and Dodds are two of my favorite people on how they create rosters, because it is solid inside and out, upside and down. They have depth. They have ability all around. Now, my biggest question last year was obviously Carson Wentz, because I hate Carson Wentz. I despise Carson Wentz. So I was questioning why they would do that. Question answered. He's not there anymore. Okay. So that's it. Gone. See ya. And I like that Ballard and the organization made an opportunity, or, created an opportunity for Wentz. Didn't work out. He's gone. They didn't stay tied to him to the point where they couldn't admit a mistake and move on. A lot of people do that. They keep trying to fit round pegs in square holes. And then next thing you know, boom, they're gone. So as a staff, I think they did a great job there. Michael Pittman, Jr., I really like his game. I like how he runs his routes, love his hands and everything. And they picked up, was it Alec Pierce this year in the draft? The kid out of Cincinnati, right? And then they got Paris Campbell, and they got some nice receivers, I think, that are just poised for breakouts. The tight end, Cox, Ali Cox, is somebody I think people sleep on too. They don't really get to see him a lot because Colts aren't always primetime TV. But he's a nice tight end, and I think in the red zone, he's a real difference maker as a tall guy. And like you said, you got JT, Jonathan Taylor running the ball, led the league in rushing last year. I think he's poised to do it again this year. Young running back that looks fantastic out there. And the defense, I mean, come on. Any defense that has Darius Leonard and
DeForest Buckner
and Petway on it, I don't know how you not like that defense. You know what I mean? So I think it's just going to be a fantastic year for these guys. I really do. I think, excuse me. I think that this is going to be a year, and I like Matty Ice. I like when they got Matty Ice, I was like, that's exactly what they needed. And again, I don't care what you call him, but mind your business field quarterback that's just not going to put the ball in bad spots. He's going to protect the ball, no turnovers. He's really a ball control quarterback, and let this defense do their thing. And Jonathan Taylor, I mean, I don't know if Matty Ice has ever really played, or hasn't played, at least in the last 5 years, with a running back like Jonathan Taylor, where Jonathan Taylor's effectiveness running the ball, and Matty Ice has a very good play action pass game. I think they really pair well with this, and what's going to happen here, you're going to see this team win about 11 or 12 games.
I think it's possible. It is. Because I like the management and I like the head coach, and I think that there's a lot of positives coming out of it, and I think that the roster is good. David, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, are you ready for this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Houston Texans coming off a 4-13 record.
Know where we're going with this.
All right, well, I'll start us off here, and I'll let you go off. All right. So What's the positives that I like, David? Here's the positive, right? I thought Pep Hamilton, the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, did a fantastic job developing Davis Mills last year. And I was very happy to see, even through a coaching change, they were able to continue to work with Davis Mills. So I think the biggest surprise you had with the Houston Texans last year is that Davis Mills looked pretty good for them last year as a third-round pick as a quarterback. He did really well. I would argue I could argue that he was the second most impressive quarterback last year of the rookie class. I mean, you could make that argument. And I like that you have Pep Hamilton in there to continue building upon that. So I like that aspect. What makes me less pessimistic is everything else, to be honest with you, man. I will always have a soft spot for Lovie Smith in my heart. He was a great defensive coordinator, did a great job with the Rams back in the day, won a Super Bowl with them. Should not be a head coach in the NFL right now. I mean, just point blank to it. Nick Caserio, I don't know, man. I look at this roster and I'm just like, I understand that you came into a position where your roster was bad to begin with. I get that. All I'll say is this offensive line outside of Laramie Tunsil, and I liked Kenyon Green, who they drafted in the first round. They probably drafted him a little bit too high, but I mean, you have Titus Howard starting right tackle, who is just not great. Your running back room is meh, not very good. Your wide receiver room is meh. Your defense is not great either. So not a lot to get excited about, but Pep Hamilton with a Davis Mills in year 2 for me. That's the ray of shining light to what is otherwise a not great situation in Houston.
You ready? The shit show that's known as the fucking Houston Texans is just an absolute atrocity of a football team. Now, that being said, they're, again, look at what they've done with their coaching searches. Look at how many people have turned down coaching's opportunity there because they just don't want to be part of the culture that is breeding and festering inside that building. Okay. Like this is a petri dish of freaking which disease is coming out of it next. All right. So now I hated that one of my favorite players got drafted there this year because that's going to make me watch them more and make me want to throw up more.
Who's that? Oh, you like Mechie? Yeah. You like Mechie?
Mechie out of Alabama was one of my favorite players this year.
Good player.
I was like so excited. He was like falling in the draft. I thought some of my other buddies might pick him up, and then Houston took him. I was like, the exploratives that came out of my mouth are not even appropriate for the unmuzzled Mav Sports Take. Okay, it's not even appropriate. The things that came out of my mouth when that happened. So, and they got Nico Collins last year, who I really enjoyed. So they got a couple players I like, and I think with Brandon Cooks is going to be an interesting triple head threat over there. But like you said, the offensive line is a travesty. The tight end position's terrible. The running back position is like, who is even there? Like, seriously. All right. And then you go to the defense. They can't stop anybody. They don't got any stopping power up front. They don't have any blitzers or anybody that's going to come in and be a kick-ass type up front pass rush guy. There's no elite pass rusher there. And then they go and take a first-round cornerback in the first round. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, it just made no sense. I like the player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bag on the player. But for these guys, there were so many other options they could have taken with that first-round pick and made an immediate impact over the next 2 to 3 years while they're building this roster over a corner. Like, the only high points we've talked about here, or I have talked about, are a couple receivers in a corner. Games are won up front.
Give Davis Mills some love, man. I thought he outperformed everybody's expectation as a rookie. Just give him some love, man.
No, I have not said anything negative about Davis Mills, did I? No. He outperformed everybody's expectation. I thought Minnesota screwed it up because Minnesota, I believe, picked right in front of the Houston Texans, and they took the kid
Kellen Mond.
Kellen Mond. And they should have taken Mills. I said that in our draft show when we had that draft show.
I liked Davis Mills coming out of Stanford.
Yeah, so I was like, they just screwed that up because Mons does not fit their their offense. Mills does. If Mills would be in Minnesota right now, you know how happy Minnesota Viking fans would be? Because this kid fit their offense like he was tailor-made for their offense. And the Houston Texans got him. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was a steal in the third round. So did you. I thought he was a second-round quarterback all day long. And again, it had depended on the offense he went to. That was going to make the effectiveness of this guy because he doesn't have the arm talent to be in any offense, but his intelligence and his ability to read the defense at Stanford were things we were very impressed about, and his ball placement is excellent. Like Davis Mills has excellent ball placement. He just doesn't have all the arm talent in the world. But like you said, Pep Hamilton absolutely works well with them. He's great with quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen Pep do this year in and year out where he's at, everywhere he goes, right? Pep has good success with quarterbacks. It's what he is and how he does things. That all being said, you know, the festering building that's down at the Houston Texans is what's going to keep this organization from really being elite team, and this roster is not an elite roster. And I'm sorry if you're a Houston Texans player and you're hearing me say you're going to prove me wrong. Go prove me wrong, okay? Go prove me wrong. But I just don't see a roster around you right now that the organization is not doing you justice. Just not.
The word of the night is fester. It's fester. The word of the night. I like that, man. I like that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, David, you have to really pull teeth to find the positives on that team. One team, David, who finished worse in the division last year, you already joked about them tonight. The 3-14 Jacksonville Jaguars under the Urban Meyer, the former great Urban Meyer.
Fucking joke.
This one, I'm a little more optimistic than the Houston Texans, just slightly. And I'll put this out there, right? Actually, not slightly. I'm more optimistic than the Houston Texans right now. Because what I did like, David, what I think they have here is I'm not the biggest Doug Peterson fan of all time, but he's clearly an upgrade over Urban Meyer. Like that's easy, right? Like that's not a big statement to make. Like yes, he's obviously an upgrade. So you upgrade coaching.
He's not
he's
a
little
liar. He's not a lazy,
little better.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he's a little bit better of an NFL head coach than Urban Meyer. So you have one step in the right direction. Your coaching got better. There's no doubt. And I think the other thing, David, is that they are willing to be aggressive, you know, and they spent some money this offseason. I think they unwisely spent some money, but at least they paid
Gucci prices for coach purses. Let's be honest here.
I'm not disagreeing with that fact, but from the perspective that I think that this team is hungry to turn it around here. I don't know if the process is great, but what I do like is that you have a guy like Trevor Lawrence as your quarterback, and you said we need to upgrade things around him. So we got a better head coach, and we spent money to try to make things better around him. So I like those instances. The other side of it, though, David, and I just kind of mentioned it, and I think it's a perfect segue into the negatives, right? The big negative is I think they mismanaged cap room this offseason, right? Like you spent the bag on a guy like a Christian Kirk, who's a solid wide receiver coming over from the Arizona Cardinals, good slot player. He's not worth the money that they're paying him, right? And they got a guy like a Brandon Scherf, who I really think is a great guard out of Washington. I'd have no issue as much with that payday. But I think that there's some mismanagement of money that they've thrown out this offseason, particularly at that wide receiver room. And I talked about Christian Kirk there. And I think you mismanaged the draft a little bit. I really think you did because you let yourself talk. You let Cam Robinson, who's not a very good left tackle, talk you into not taking an offensive tackle potentially. Instead, you drafted a very raw edge player who apparently, David, Trayvon Walker, who played a 3-4 defensive end in Georgia, is now playing a 3-4 outside linebacker role for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's going to end up terrible. And again, I like the raw tools of Trayvon Walker, but I do not like that fit into that role in that system, but we'll see. So I think that they mismanaged their money a little bit, and I think they mismanaged the roster just in general. But I do like the aggressiveness. I like you have your quarterback in place, and I think that the coaching got upgraded. So there's a lot of positives. I just don't – I like their idea. I just don't 100% agree with the process, if that makes sense.
By the way, big ups Colombia. Thanks for tuning in. I got a Colombian guy in the TikTok right now. I'm having to hit translate on what he's asking because he's writing in Spanish. So it's awesome. We're worldwide, baby. We are worldwide. But that being said, get back to the show. Yeah, they overpaid on every free agent I thought they signed, and they have most of the ones they signed all have injury history and recent injury history. Now, while the guard Shrift is a very solid guard when he's healthy, he's only played like 16 games in 2 seasons or something like that. So that's all I'm saying is like you can't overpay for people when they're in that situation. When Hopkins went down out here in Arizona with an injury, the team just fell apart because people did not fear Christian Kirk. They didn't. Up until that point, they were like a 10-win game or season or something last year. And then DeAndre Hopkins went down. They just focused straight up on, on the run game, shut down the run game, and boom, they didn't do much. The Cardinals' teeth were out of them because Christian Kirk is not a true weapon. He's a good, like you said, a good slot, a good 3. I think he's an excellent 3. He'd be like one of the best 3s in the league. But can he make the move up to a 2 and a 1 for sure? No, he can't. He cannot. So. And to pay him the way they did, that's just going to hamstring them for a long time to come. I love Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to take a huge step this year. But again, is Peterson an upgrade over the joke Urban Meyer? Absolutely,
for sure.
But Peterson to me is what had some falsehood to him too, because Frank Reich was there underneath him, and Frank did some play calling and made some stuff happen with those quarterbacks. And when they won the Super Bowl in Philly, then when Frank got hired in the Colts, Peterson just fell apart up there in Philadelphia. So while he's an upgrade over a very subpar coach, I think he's a mediocre coach in the NFL. And that's just the way it goes. There's a lot of, again, building culture is a problem in Jacksonville. There's a lot of negative reports coming out of the building in Jacksonville. So it's going to be an issue and what hamstrings them. What do I like about this? I love that Travis Etienne's back. I think Etienne's going to make a huge impact with James Robinson next year. I think this is going to be a fun 1-2 punch. I think Etienne back in that huddle for Lawrence is going to be huge for his confidence. On the offensive side, like you said, Trayvon Walker, when they drafted him, I'm like, all right, cool. Like you got a 3-4 defense. You got this young kid. He's raw. He's going to be a good addition to your team. And now they go stand him up and play him outside. I'm like, if you wanted that guy, take the Michigan kid, Hutchinson. If you wanted the stand-up outside linebacker, you should have taken Hutchinson. You're not going to have that with this kid Walker. It's just not his game. It's just not his strength, right? That I just didn't understand. Like I was like, okay, I get it. Number 1 overall pick. You're taking this amazing physical athlete. Okay. You know what? I didn't hate on him. I celebrated it. But then they told me the role he was going to play. And I was like, well, sorry, kid. You had a shot at being a good player. But now, now you're just going to get bounced around and that's not going to work. So, for me, it's just, I didn't understand that at all. And I hope they get him into camp and they change his position and they realize that to get the most out of him, he's got to put his hand in the dirt and let him, beat guards and beat tackles and do his thing, because he really does have some raw talent in that role, just not the one they're designing for him. So that being said, I think I'm not a big fan of what's going on in Jacksonville at all. Now, I like a couple of the offseason moves they made. Obviously, I just think they overpaid for them. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think the running back room is going to be a very solid room for him. I think the quarterback position is a solid place to start, obviously. But they went and got Evan Ingram, who I'm never going to talk favorably about, ever.
He's wearing he's playing tight end and wearing number 17.
I would rather see them just start with Dan Arnold and have Manhurts behind him and then figure out the third position, because Evan Ingram to me was a waste of space in New York. He's going to be a waste of space here. So, again, I'm not high on these guys. I think they finished last in the division. Them and Houston figure out who's going to get the number 1 pick overall next year.
I don't disagree with that fact. And the last thing I'll say is I like Devin Lloyd a ton out of Utah. David, the first round pick out of the linebacker out of Utah. He's wearing number 33 playing linebacker. Who's giving these numbers out, man? 33 playing linebacker? That's an ugly, ugly number, Devin.
And again, I like Devin Lloyd too. I'm sorry.
I like Devin.
I should have talked about him. My apologies to Devin, because you're a good young player. You got good instincts. He's fast. He kind of reminds me of Leonard a little bit in that they have over there in Minnesota or at the Colts in Indianapolis. So he's a good young player. I think he's going to be have a stellar rookie year. There's going to be a lot of tackles for him to make because that the up front is just going to allow people to get to him, though. I think it's going to be hard, But no, he was a good first round pick, and that was one I missed. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good. Just wanted to hit on that terrible number for Devin Lloyd. So, David, we are through the AFC South and AFC North. We're going to hit on the AFC West and AFC East. I almost said AFC West, AFC East on next week's Mavs Sports Take. This is episode 88. I want to thank everybody before I kick it over to David Turner for the final word of the night, as we do each and every week. Really appreciate everybody out there, whether you are on Twitter, YouTube, or TikTok, taking it in live. If you could, please go to Apple, give us a 5-star review, share this podcast, spread the word. Continued growth is always great for us on this Believe Podcast Network. So, David, last word of the night, my friends. What do you want to leave the folks with for tonight?
I just want to, say to everybody, thank you so much for always tuning in, being loyal, and downloading our episodes. Even if you sat in and you listened to it all tonight, if you could even just go download it and show us some love, so our download numbers grow, I would appreciate it. Share it with friends and family that might be AFC East and AFC North, or I'm sorry, AFC South and North fans, and say, hey, come check out what they had to say about your team tonight. And maybe you disagree or don't disagree. Find us on social media. Tell us you disagree. We respond. We talk back, obviously, on TikTok all the time. Ryan's always on Twitter. We're everywhere. So, yeah, if you send something to us, we'll definitely hit it as much as possible. I just like to say, everybody, with everything the world's going through, let's not lose focus on who we are as people and who we are as human beings. I chose to live my life not too long ago by 3 core values: passion, intelligence, and integrity, the PII that I have in life. And, if you could find those core values for yourself and tie all your decision making to it, you'll never go wrong. And, don't waver and question who we are as a country. Because, the core values really start with, we the people of the United States of America. It's not just, individuals and parties and stuff. It's we the people. So, if you really have a passion for it, go vote, go make your voice heard, do everything lawfully. And, let's just show the world of what a true democracy truly belongs looking like, because what's going on right now often gets confused as the norm, when it's really not what's supposed to be going on.
Mav Sports Take, episode 88. Please, again, share, subscribe. We'll see you again, same time, same